Hey, getting ready to view Jupiter and Neptune in conjunction. They're going to be really low in the sky, so I'll have to look for somewhere with a high ground. And I'm excited about taking some good photos. But every time a stargazing event like this comes up, it makes me really think about Single Lives Matter, because I had too many bad experiences of racing back and forth to view stargazing events, and then I see other people call off for other important reasons in life, and they seem to have their way. And today I'm having a similar problem. I'll get to today in a second. Let's talk about the past first. Back in 2019, I went out to view a lunar eclipse. I was working at a tutoring center at the time, and I probably could have taken that day off, but the students really loved me. And they loved to hear my stargazing stories, and I really didn't want stargazing to become associated with the fact that they had to have 2 or 3 days with a different tutor. And so that was that. Meanwhile, I had one colleague who had a family emergency. She was from China, and she wasn't going home to China. She was just staying up talking to her family members on the phone. I think she had an elderly family member who was ill in the hospital. And she called off for that, which I think is reasonable, but I think taking good photographs is worth a day or two off as well. I would often drive back the same day. I would drink a lot of coffee or tea. I remember at one point I was taking 3 to 5 grams of caffeine a day altogether, and I was just thinking, gee, can you imagine having somebody who has other issues and taking caffeine like that? You certainly don't want somebody who's pregnant or breastfeeding to do that, right? And but if you're single, that's perfectly okay. Now in 2020, I was hoping, I had a girlfriend at the beginning of 2020, and I was preparing to propose to her on December 21st, 2020, because Jupiter and Saturn would come into conjunction. And I went out there to well, first, before that, we had a lunar eclipse on the 4th of July, only a penumbral one, in 2020. And I was working remotely for a university and also a tutoring center, and I naively thought, I'll just go there and find somewhere to work on the road. I had an outlet that I could plug in my car and just drive around looking for Wi-Fi. It didn't turn out. And so I was racing from place to place. You got to remember the situation in July of 2020. Not only could you not go into a restaurant and sit down, oftentimes you couldn't find a bathroom on the road. And I remember this one time I pooped on the side of the road, and I was amazed that I could do that, right? We hear about stories from India, from Southeastern Asia or Africa, people doing that. I never thought I would do that here in the United States. And so I assumed that you got to remember that the sentiment we had in July of 2020, it was supposed to be a shared sacrifice, right? But then a couple days later, my colleague has some childcare issues. Her babysitter had gotten COVID-19 or something, or just called off for whatever reason, and asked if I could fill in for something. And I'm thinking, gee, the other night, instead of me pooping on the road, shouldn't I have gone home and you filled in? That's what I'm thinking. I didn't say it out loud. But that's the sentiment that I've been having over the last 3 to 4 years that I've been stargazing. I went out to Vantage, Washington to view the Great Conjunction. By this point, my girlfriend and I had broken up. Well, not broken up, but we realized we weren't the right material. And so I had the best solo sexual relationship I ever had, starting around the beginning of the pandemic. I went out to Vantage, Washington to view the lunar eclipse, or the Great Conjunction. And once again, I feel guilty about calling off. You got to remember, this is the second big wave of COVID. And also, at the time, there was this big threat that I might lose my job altogether because of this great new invention that they want us to take up our arms, right? I think just recently they passed around the 4th dose of that stuff, and I wanted to accumulate as much as I could in terms of credibility at my workplace, because I thought by the time they were forcing these people, this substance around, if I had a good rapport with everybody, it might change the dynamics of that. And so once again, I poop on the side of the road. I'm war driving for Wi-Fi. That's what I learned it was called, war driving for Wi-Fi and all that. And meanwhile, my colleagues are getting COVID-19 and can't even work remotely because they're very ill. Their voice isn't right, or they have childcare issues. I work through COVID-19 remotely, obviously. And today, April 7th, 2022, I'm still working at a different tutoring center than the one than I was 4 years ago, and also at the university. Now, what's really upsetting, I wouldn't say upsetting, but what's really troubling is that next week is the spring break for the kids, but there's so much uncertainty if there's any work, right? If there is, I can prepare for it. If not, I could go away, but there's just all this uncertainty, right? Meanwhile, my colleagues who have childcare issues or whatnot, all the uncertainty gets pushed to me, right? If next week there might be certain times we need 4 tutors, right? I'm going to be the one who gets the uncertainty part of that package, right? Anyways, enough complaining. Let's view the conjunction. We'll deal with that later. Thanks for watching.